Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started. There are still some seats in the front, so if you need a seat, you can come sit in the front or over here to the left. Excellent. There's a whole bunch of seats over here to my left if folks need a place to sit. Or not. That's also fine. Welcome back to the JFK Forum MPID alumni. So I'm Amy Davies, and here at HKS, I am the Assistant Dean of Student Services and Programs. If you were looking at an org chart of the school, it would appear as if I am Carol Finney's supervisor. It would appear that way. I'm also an alumna from 2010 from another degree program that shall not be named at this time. But today and now, I am here to introduce this session, to give you a sense of how we'll spend a little bit of time together this morning, and I will pop up in between each speaker to keep things moving. This is a list of our speakers. What a list of luminaries. But don't worry, I will introduce each of them one by one. In their remarks, there is something for everyone. We will have memories of origins and the past. We will have reflections on the current state of global development and the MPID program. And we'll have some vision of what's ahead for development and the MPID program. This is MPAID, so some of our speakers will be bringing data. Some will have slides. There may even be video. And at the end of it all, we have our biggest challenge for you yet, taking a group photo of this entire forum. So you are not to leave until we complete that task. It's worse than math camp and worse than your worst problem set. It's group work, there's free riders, the whole thing will be chaos. It's gonna be great. Before we get started with our first speaker, some appreciation. Our Alumni Steering Committee, let's give them a round of applause. This group has been working on this event for months. I will say they were working on this event before this event was approved and before this event had a budget, so thank you to them. They, in turn, mobilized so many others of you, leaders in your classes, and that led us to last night when I just have to say special thanks to those with the flash mob, those with the wigs, and those with the singing and the dancing. I was unaware of the talent in this group of alumni, so thank you to all of you for that. And thank you to our event sponsors and our event supports. For sponsors, we have Reimagining the Economy, Building State Capability, the Growth Lab, the Center for International Development, and the Harvard Culture Lab. Thank you for helping make this event happen. Clap. And to our event support, the Harvard University Dining Services, known as HUDs, Campus Planning and Operations, Media Services, special folks in degree programs and student affairs, especially Erin Mead, who had a hand in every single part of today and yesterday. Julie Galanti and Laura King for the design and all of that support, and Martha, our photographer, and other folks who will also be thanked, so don't worry. Thank you to all. So let's get started. Our first speaker is Joe McCarthy. He was the Senior Associate Dean and Director of Degree Programs before MPID was even a glimmer on the horizon. Come forth to share, Joe.
A hand for Amy. She does a great job. I've never before been called a luminary, certainly not in this building, but I'm going to put it on my resume. Good morning. Welcome back to the flag-festooned forum. How many of these can you identify? There's a prize if you can identify them all. Lunch with Carol Finny will be the prize. So it's great to be back. I'm going to, if you don't mind, follow my notes because I've been told to be brief since there's so many speakers. And I can read this better than I can read this these days. So this is the celebration of the 25th celebration of the MPAID program. Or as I think, yes, of course. Or as I think we can justifiably call it, the Carol Finney Fan Festival. I know how to get applause. I, by the way, consider myself a charter member of the Carol Finney Fan Club. Now, I'm aware that there are several speakers, so I'm going to be brief, or try to be brief, and follow these notes so I don't ramble on as I so often do. Following Franklin Roosevelt's advice to speakers, 3 things: be prepared, be brief, and be seated. So let me try to at least be brief. Let me first just say that it's been great to meet and re-meet so many of you and to find out the wonderful things you're doing with your educations from here and carrying out very well the Kennedy School mission. In doing so, you pay fitting tribute to the memory of the founder of the MPAID program, former Dean Joseph Nye, a brilliant scholar and great leader who sadly and suddenly passed away 10 days ago. He would, no doubt, have taken great satisfaction in meeting with you and hearing your stories. So many of you are doing exactly what he had in mind, and your work is a good example of his famous concept of soft power. Now, Joe Nye was both a visionary and a very decisive leader. I'll never forget the morning I came into my office right around the corner there and turned on my old bulky desktop computer to be greeted by his announcement that we would have a new Masters in International Development program, degree program, and that the first class would matriculate in the next academic year. Decisive man. Now, there had been for some time faculty discussions about creating such a program, but I certainly wasn't under the impression that the decision was imminent. I suddenly felt a pang of panic as I realized that in addition to our several existing degree programs, we will now also be responsible for the administration of an entirely new one, for which we would have to begin recruiting students in the very near future in order to have a class ready to matriculate the following autumn. Fortunately, the school had the brilliant Professor Dani Rodrik and his creative faculty colleagues to design an excellent, if very demanding curriculum. Last night when you said there was one condition that you would take, and I thought, well, of course it meant Carol, but you didn't even know Carol at that point. But there were also many, many administrative questions to be answered as well, including who would these new international development students be and where in the wide world, literally, would they come from? How would we reach out, recruit, and admit them? Could the international students obtain the necessary visas? Was even a problem back then. Also, where would these students live? There was very little housing for graduate students in those days. Harvard has built a number of nice venues since then. And of course, how could these new students afford the cost of attendance? Where would we find the additional financial aid, funds, and fellowships to support them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Now, in life, as you know, it's useful to be smart and competent, but it is even better to be lucky. Yes, you know, yes. And the way to get really lucky is to surround yourself with people who are smarter and more competent than you are. And in this case, I was very lucky indeed, because not long after the dean's announcement, my phone rang, and it was my very smart and competent friend, Carol Finny, who had preceded me 10 years earlier, a dozen years earlier, whatever, in Dean Graham Allison's office. And now, after a decade, did you spend a whole decade working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? You deserve a medal. She was calling to say she was interested in returning to work at the Kennedy School. Mirabile dictu, yes, a wonderful thing. If there happened to be an appropriate position open, and there certainly was, I immediately said, "Have I got a deal for you?" This is essentially true. I've dramatized it a little bit just for entertainment. After I described the multiple daunting challenges of starting and directing this new master's program, Carol, of course, enthusiastically asked, "When can I start?" And the rest is history. Professor Dan Levy once asked me how I knew I should hire Carol to direct the MPAID program. And I quite honestly replied, "Because she told me to." I'm not kidding. Some of you may also recall at the beginning of your math camp, my offering my most important piece of advice, which was always do what Carol tells you. It's the key to success, and it certainly was in my case. So to dear Carol and Professor Rodrik and his colleagues, I am grateful for your rescuing me those many years ago and building a best-in-class program that has attracted so many wonderful, talented students and stands as such a very appropriate tribute to its visionary founder, Dean Joe Nye. May he rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe. Our next speaker is Lant Pritchett. You know him as longtime faculty member in the MPID program, intermittent faculty chair. I know now that he knows how to sport a blonde wig and dance. Welcome to the stage, Lant.
Actually, one of the first things I did at the Kennedy School when I arrived was part of a wig-based Elvis dance with Graham Allison. And I thought, this is a very different place than I expected Harvard to be. Graham, and I would say Joe Nye, but I don't think Joe Nye would agree to that. Anyway, I'm going to talk about sort of past, in particular the MPID, a little bit about present and future as assigned. And I'm going to start with showing you my finger. And it's an awkward finger to demonstrate, because it's this one. But of course it is. But if you look at the color of this finger, you'll see it's a very different color than the other fingers. And the reason for that is I have an autoimmune disease. And I have an autoimmune disease that kills one of the clotting factors in my blood called platelets. So a normal person has about 150,000 platelets, and I have about 12,000. So when you ask why I have a bruise, it's because the slightest contact of anything and I bleed. Now, I think the reason I bring that up is that if I went to many doctors, they would say, you should lose weight. And this is the nature of a lot of economic advice. It is true. I should lose weight. But that's not my real problem for this bruise. So there's generic advice that generically, middle-aged 66-year-old white male can probably use to lose some weight. It doesn't hurt you to give that advice, but it's not particularly helpful because A, I'm not going to. And B, it's not my real problem. It is not, as we say, the binding constraint. So when I came to the MPID, what I was looking to do is build a program that could train people to be useful in the business of development, and which meant that we really needed a program that was going to train doctors by doctors, and not train doctors by chemists. To be a doctor, you need to know chemistry. But to be a doctor, you need to apply it in the specificity of the condition of the patient. And hence, you need a lot of diagnostics. So one thing that I think that the MPID program did well over the course of its existence, starting from what Dani memorably called our revolting class, which has a wonderful ambiguity to it. We actually, in the course of saying, how would we build a program that would train people to be useful in the actual practice of development, the fields and disciplines surrounding this didn't actually have the material we needed. We couldn't just teach disciplinary courses and expect the students to acquire the practical skills. So we actually built a lot of brand new approaches, frameworks, diagnostics that help them get from you lose weight to you have an autoimmune condition inside a really complex organism, and hence the solution to that is not obvious. Because if you said you lack platelets, you could say, let's give you more platelets. Let's put some platelets in your arm, and that would be stupid. And that would be stupid because the reason I have too few platelets is my body is killing them. So we tried to build a system and a curriculum and new tools that help students go out into the world and first appropriately understand and diagnose the binding constraints to improvement before they started into the therapeutics. Whereas I think a lot of fields rush to the therapeutics or rush to advice before the understanding. That's the first thing I want to say, and that's my characterization of the past. And I think if we did anything in the MPID program, I think we paid a lot of attention to how to train a new generation of people who understood chemistry as well as people trained in chemistry, but were really practitioners of the art of diagnose and not pre-rush into nice sounding but not very helpful recommendations and into a therapeutics. Second thing is the present. I don't know, it's a variety of ages here. The movie Moana, the Disney movie. So some of you might have seen it as children, some of you might have children and have seen it. It has a wonderful song where the girl shows up and discovers the rock as a Polynesian god, which not a stretch for him. He's both Polynesian and built like a god, so. And the song is, he sings a song, You're Welcome. And it's like he thinks she's there to worship him. And I think everybody who's worked in the field of development over the last period in which there's been development should learn the song, because development has been the single biggest improver of the well-being of human beings in the history of mankind by an order of magnitude. The world, before the onset of a field called development, was a really awful place for most of the world's population. And the improvement since, say, the 1950s to today is unbelievably transformational on every single indicator. Now, whether or not the people who worked in development had anything to do with that is a hard question. But the crazy thing is, the world believes that didn't happen. So we can have a debate about whether Tom Brady or Bill Belichick accounted for the Patriots winning Super Bowls, but the world's having a debate about whether the Super Bowls got won. That's stupid. So the first thing about development is that development happened. And having been part of team development is an important thing to be proud of. So the present is we should be proud of the achievements of team development because we're playing on the team. And attribution is an extraordinarily hard thing, but I'll take the ring. The third thing, and I have 2 minutes and 15 seconds left because I stick to time. The third thing is, I think the future of development is impossible to predict, but I think the future of development needs to be more focused on the needs of countries and people in the South and less focused on the needs and wishes of voters in the North for what development should look like. So in a very inadvertent and cruel and stupid and almost certainly illegal way, some administrations in the world, which I won't name, are making it the reality that we need to worry less about them because they're not going to be players anymore. But what we need to do is focus on what does development become that remains relevant and useful to the people for whom it always was meant to benefit. And how we fund that and sustain that is a key question, but I think part of the answer has to be we need to get better and more focused, not less focused, on are we being able to give decent diagnostic therapeutic advice about how to improve the living conditions of the world, and less focused on maintaining the money at all costs. And the fact that that money's not coming back, I think, might actually be a help. And that I was told to say something controversial. That's controversial enough. I learned from a tour of a National Museum of Denmark that had a program called Meet a Dane, in which a nice Danish person would walk around the museum with you. And I felt, as the author of a phrase, getting to Denmark, to describe, I had to meet a Dane. But they lost 2 of their provinces in a war to Germany in the 18th century. And the motto that was adopted by Denmark was, we will make up for what we lost externally by becoming stronger internally. I think as a motto for the future of development, I think we could adopt that. We have lost a war, and we're not going to go back and re-win that, but we can make ourselves stronger internally as a result and reaction to what happened there. Now I will stop, because my timer said to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lant. Our next speaker is Dani Rodrik, also long-term faculty member in the NPID program, occasionally leaving for Princeton, and currently faculty co-chair of the NPID program. Welcome, Dani.
You know, just as Lant was coming up on here, it suddenly dawned on me that I had violated one of my sort of long-standing rules whenever I'm at a conference or a panel with Lant, which has been, and there have been many such occasions, that I would ask the organizers, don't put me right after Lant. Okay, so I don't know how this oversight happened, but obviously I'm getting old, and time for me to step down as faculty chair of the MPAID, but it's so wonderful to see you here. We're celebrating many, many things, and there's so many things to say, and I have so limited time, but I'm often asked in fact, just today and yesterday, many of you asked me, what has changed in the MPAID program since the program started? And whenever I get this question, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that nothing much has changed with the MPAID program, and that's a bit of a curious thing. I mean, of course, we've had some changes in. There's been faculty turnover. The class size has gotten a little bit bigger than what we had originally planned. But when you really think about the structure of the program, the design of the curriculum, really not much has changed. And so much has changed in the world of development and the global landscape. And how is it possible that we haven't changed? I think it speaks to some of the enduring truths and values of the MPAID program, which remain fresh and relevant as ever, despite the changing context. So let me mention what I think are three key of those truths and values of the MPAID. The first one I would say is don't buy into the current fad. Okay? One of the things that I keep telling students in the orientation is we're going to try to teach you how to think, not what to think. And that's sort of the essence of the program, and sort of it's so much focused on tools and methods and learning how to think from the ground up without presumptions about what the right approach is. When this program started, we thought we knew so much about, what the right policies were. We're in the midst of the Washington Consensus. We thought, sort of it was all, we had the ideas. Then we went into a revolution about sort of, the importance of institutions and governance and various models. But there was knowledge that was accumulating at the same time that was showing that these sort of blueprints and best practices and so forth weren't very, very helpful, that you really need to think and be creative on your own. We had, of course, that whole revolution with randomized controlled trials, and which had a very deeply experimental nature to them, trying new things in different settings. And understanding that what works in one place doesn't necessarily work in another. So that the need to really think for yourself. The second thing, which I think is really especially relevant today, is that we've always emphasized that lack of resources, of which finance and aid, of course, is a key component, is often just a symptom of underdevelopment. It's not a cause. It's not necessarily a determinant. That you need to think about what the deeper causes are, sort of the method of diagnostics that Lant was talking about. Sometimes problems are lack of resources, maybe you're not getting enough money, whether domestically or through financial foreign aid, but often the problems are going to lie somewhere else. It might be lack of incentives, it might be poor governance, it might be poor institutions, it might be somewhere entirely different from where you're sitting as a poor farmer in the rural, in the countryside. It might be the decisions that finance ministers or central bankers are making, and poor macroeconomic decisions. Trying to figure out, doing the diagnostics and being able to understand what it is that is the true source of the problem, and not just fixating on financial aid and what other countries can do for you. That's obviously very relevant today, and I think Lant quite rightly emphasized that, which is that foreign aid is, what has happened with foreign aid is truly criminal. And we know the consequences are very adverse in terms of hardship and mortality and disease in the rest of the world. But ultimately, and this is, I think, the third key truth of the MPAID, if you will, that I want to emphasize, that ultimately everything that happens in development happens through local decisions. It's the context. It's what happens by sort of the decision makers in the countries, in the settings where the decisions are being taken. And we know this because we've had, whether the external context was good or bad, we've had countries that were doing well or poorly. It was because of decisions that they were making themselves. So the global context can be very conducive. If you're not making the right decisions, it's not going to work out for you. We're now moving into an era where the global context is not going to be nearly as conducive and welcoming and benign as it has been. But that should not distract us from the fact that, again, it's going to be largely the decisions that local policymakers, civil society leaders, investors and producers and farmers and workers, that those are the decisions that are going to matter for what actually happens, that agency, that autonomy exists. And I think here I echo again, Lant thought it was being controversial, since I guess I agree with him. It's not being controversial at all when he made those points. So let me say a word about the field of development per se, because I think it's also relevant both to the past and the future of the MPAID. Joe McCarthy, you may remember these early discussions when the MPAID was being created in the Kennedy School. Some members of the faculty expressed the concern that this was going to be the first and today the only sort of special purpose master's degree program in the Kennedy School focused on development. And that was very different from what the Kennedy School had been doing or traditionally has done. And the concern was this going to be something too specific, too domain specific? And that is clearly that concern has proved not very, not a serious one for a couple of reasons. One, consider the role of development economics within economics in general. So we call development economics as if it was a subfield of economics. But really, what is development economics? It's public finance, it's industrial organization, it's labor economics, it's health, education, monetary and fiscal policy, all the fields of economics, but applied in a particular setting, which we call developing countries. So really, it's not very, very narrow at all. And today, it's no longer about low-income countries either, because when you look at the problems that development economics or development or the MPAID addresses, these are issues that advanced countries, rich countries are facing. Problems of lack of opportunity, lagging regions, poor jobs, and the disappearance of investment opportunities. These are, in some sense, in a real sense, some of the underlying deep causes of the economic, social, and political problems that advanced countries are facing together today. There's a new kind of what the development economists would call dualism in the advanced countries. Dualism, that's a concept from development, right? But it's so relevant to what is actually happening in advanced countries with the sort of divisions opening up between the winners and the losers and the weaknesses and the erosion of the middle class. So all these things that we've been trying to develop, all these concepts, ideas, are increasingly relevant to the advanced countries as well. It's a bit of a, we talk in development economics about convergence. This is unfortunately convergence from above, right? But what does that mean? The happy thing for the MPAIDs, of course, is that all these tools are incredibly applicable, relevant to all the major problems that we're encountering. And of course, sort of that is reason why, as we've talked to all of you, and it's amazing the wide range of fields and occupations and professions that you're engaged in. That goes really beyond sort of the narrow development that one might have thought. Now, have we done everything right? No, I mean, obviously not. I mean, do I have, I think we were better at integrating some of the other disciplines in the core beyond economics and quantitative methods. I wish we did better at sort of having more qualitative methods and teaching qualitative methods. I wish we were better at instilling in our students a kind of a more reflective sort of approach to what is the end of development beyond economics and incomes, the importance of, I think we've totally missed the importance of jobs and communities, for example, as we approach issues. But I think you can't broaden in any of those dimensions without having gone through the kinds of things that we take you here. So in that sense, I feel quite proud about the program. Now, I have been lucky to have had I was not involved in bringing Carol Finny here, and that probably was the most important decisions that was ever made to the success of the MPID, but I was involved in bringing Lant here, who was my predecessor as faculty chair for a number of years. And I was very happy to have been involved in bringing my successor to the Kennedy School as well, Eliana La Ferrara. And I'll give you a little bit of a secret now, which I've never told Eliana, that I actually did not want to step down as faculty chair of MPAID. I was enjoying this, as you can see, despite my initial reticence. But when Eliana came, I mean, Eliana is such I won't speak about her scholarship. I mean, that's, goes without saying, but I mean, she's such a mentor. She's so thoughtful. She's such a wonderful person. She has such a provider of public goods. I knew that if I delayed stepping down, that before very long, Eliana would be taken up by some other program or some other center or something else. I am looking at Jeremy here. So I knew that I had this very sort of narrow window within which she had not been grabbed and claimed by something else that would keep her, and then if I stepped down, we might convince her to take on. And I succeeded, so I'm very, very happy that Eliana is taking over. Thank you. I'm so happy that she's going to do that, and with that, I'll just sort of let Eliana come over.
Consistency is good. Our next speaker is Eliana La Ferrara, currently co-chair of the MPID program and future solo chair of the MPID program. Welcome, Eliana.
Okay, so if you wanted to move me and freak me out, you've succeeded in both. No, it's really great to be here. It's such an honor for me to be part of the program already as one of the faculty that teaches, and thinking of leading it together with Sarah is actually, truly a privilege. I also thought, having now gone through 3 cohorts of MPAD students, that I had met so many amazing people, and thinking of 25 times as many here, it's probably beyond what my mind can conceive right now. But what I want to do in the time I'm giving, which is not much, is start by actually recognizing the value of what we have. Assessing challenges ahead and opportunities, and also sketching some potential directions for the future. And I think Amy said there will be data, so guilty as charged, that's me. I'm gonna show you some data that the great team that worked on the 20th reunion, and you see their names there, Salima, Kevin, Daniel, Angelo, and Marla, have put together through a survey. And I must thank Catalina, who's here, right? Where is she? Catalina. Okay, she is responsible for the analysis. So this is what we ask you to do when you are in the MPAD program or after you graduate. So this is a survey that probably a good number of you completed. We had over 1,000 responses. And when you do data work and survey work, a 75% response on an unincentivized survey where people have nothing to expect is pretty good. Okay, so first thing, the MPAD, this survey shows you that the MPAD is truly global. We knew it. What I found striking is if you look at the countries from which people came in the first editions and how these evolved over time, you will see how it's spreading. So the ear is in the top right-hand corner, and now this animation will start. And the colors you will see are proportional to the number of people from each country in every cohort, okay? So cohort of 2001, the first one is gonna be you, okay? Okay, so this is the cumulative, and the Indians in the cohort of 2024, you have a big responsibility. All right, so this is where you came from. Where do you work? And again, based on survey respondents, we see a large number of people working in North America, especially United States, also Mexico, UK, India, but look at South America as well. My hope is that in the future, we can see more placement in other regions, especially Africa, as well as East Asia. What type of jobs do you have? And here, the various blocks are different occupations, and the height of the bar is proportional to how many people there. What this question represents is your subjective assessment of whether wherever you are, whether in multilaterals, in consulting, you feel that what you're doing is advancing public interest. And it's quite striking that that's what you're doing, okay? You're not just doing probably the job you came in for, but wherever you are advancing public interest. And are you leaders? The answer is yes. Now, not so many of you have run for office. Maybe this is something that in the future, being at the Kennedy School, you want to consider more. But in terms of being either in leadership position or having founded and led an organization yourself, 2/3 of you or 1/3 of you respectively have done this, which is quite impressive. Now, we know that part of it is thanks to the curriculum and the skills that we're building, as Dani mentioned. And here we asked, what are the 4 most important skills that you're using in your current job? You will not be surprised to see that on top is economic analysis. Quite a lot, leadership and managing people. I'm going to say a little bit more about this later. And then communication, but also research, design, data collection, data processing, policy design. So it feels like these are all things that we stress a lot in our coursework and that you end up using. Of course, you always wish that we had done something more or something different. And your best guess for what you wish to see more in the curriculum is probably leadership, management, negotiation, also technology and data science. So when we think about future directions, we will acknowledge some of this and think about how to embed it, but overall, the skills you have don't seem to be too inadequate. Now, the other thing about the MPAD, if you look around, is it's a unique and amazing network. And I think it's amazing also in a very personal sense. This network has surely helped you grow, not only for what you know and what you learned, but for the person you are. And I think that's part of the impact we're going to have in the world, is the person we are. We cannot underestimate the professional networking aspect, though. So what were the most important factors in obtaining your first jobs? About 2/3 of you said that the MPID network itself played either a crucial or an influential role. This is on top of the overall HKS network. Of course, the Harvard name helped, and also the MPID degree as a whole. One of the figures, if I have to say the one that struck me the most when I saw this data, is how much you guys interact on a professional basis. And the last bar there, which is 302 out of 754, are people who within the last month have interacted with another MPAD for professional reasons. And this survey was done on cohorts from 2001 onwards. I don't think I can think of another network in which this would be true, sort of 20 years down the line. Okay, so what next? There are challenges we discussed. This is a critical moment for global development. Traditional aid structures have contracted. USAID was dismantled, FCDO cut 40% of the budget. The lives of over 1 billion people have been impacted, and I think we have the right to be in shock for this. I think shock is the right word. But there's a temptation to be discouraged, and I think we also have the duty of fighting that temptation. I was at a conference where a panel of real amazing and impactful researchers and policymakers discussed what this is, what the implications are. And Esther Duflo said a sentence that stuck with me. She said, it was never about aid. And when she said that, my first thought was about what we do in the program, what we do in the MPAD program. If you think about the things you try to learn and we teach you is which policies may trigger growth, which policies may reduce inequalities, improve opportunities, reduce poverty. And many of the programs that we study have been implemented by governments with their own resources. We don't teach you, how to do cooperation and disperse aid. We teach you how to trigger a process that ideally is self-sustaining and that's generated in the country. So they haven't killed what we do, okay? And what, as both Lant and Dani have argued, what this has done is simply refocus our attention on where it should have been throughout, which is development needs to be centered where it belongs. We need to focus more on working with countries and with local expertise. So I would like to tell you that even though maybe it's taking a little longer to find your internship or your job, your skills are as important as ever. Now, other things that have changed and that present challenges is the world is not what it was even 5 years ago, okay? New technologies, the role of AI, these are factors that are creating fundamental transformations, both to the functioning of our economies, to jobs, to communities, to inequality, but also to the way we do policy. In a session this morning, Anders Jensen was talking about public finance, and he's saying how now there's a new concept of individualized policy. If you're familiar with medical treatments, personalized medicine has been the new frontier for a while. We are only starting now to thinking about policy at that level of flexibility. And AI and technology imply a lot also for our pedagogy. So here, we're lucky to have some great minds among our faculty, but we'll need to develop more exploiting these tools. And finally, we know the change that's happening to the political landscape, to our democratic institutions, and this has profound implications for the countries we work with and for the feasibility of policies that we recommend. So how does this impact the MPID and the future? We've been working a lot with partners and local partners, but I think we need to invest more and also differently. We need to be creative, partner with research and policy networks, partner with all sorts of local actors that we haven't been so focused on. And working with these actors, I think, is going to build talent in you, because we learn. Every time I go on a field trip, I learn. I'm the first one to learn. So you will learn. But I like to think that you become now trainers for these partners. So if you think about the multiplier effect of the training that HKS offers, if we do this seriously, we're going to be reaching way further than we would otherwise. Also, HKS has incredibly impactful research centers, and I think the MPAD can do more in taking advantage of these centers. Now we know that Growth Lab and Ricardo have been employers of MPIDs for a long time, but there's many more centers. And thinking about CID, for example, under the leadership of Asim and Fatima, I've seen that they created many new programs for students, global internship, student ambassador, research scholar. I'd love to see more and more of these types of programs within CID and other centers, and how they can be combined with your work for internships and SIPAs. And I think, please get in touch, because you're here, many of the people who work in these centers are here. You can help create new opportunities for our MPID students, and also get involved. Finally, there will be some need to expand the curriculum. I think the data science, as well as the leadership or negotiation, are things that we can embed more. And yesterday, Dani said that he's waiting for the dean to step down to involve him in teaching. I am more ambitious. I want to do it before he steps down. But, okay, so please, for this, what you think we could do better and we could do more, feel free to reach out, because we need your inputs. I will conclude. I know my time is up, but I got a special permission for a thank you, which is Carol and Dani, Bonnie and Clyde, and and so the thank you to Carol involved a wig and a dance. I tried very hard, couldn't find the Dani Rodrik wig on Amazon. And I thought my 80s dance moves would sort of not create the persona that I need to project as new director. But I was lucky to have a number of colleagues, former faculty, former students, who really wanted to say something for Dani. So I'm gonna thank Dani in their words. And this number was very large. I sampled, okay? So you're to be in a confined space. So I'm gonna launch this.
Hi, Dani. I want to congratulate you on having formulated and led and guided what clearly is the best public policy master's program in the world, and has been for many years under your guidance. I also want to express how much I enjoyed teaching the core development course with you in those years, and also how much I learned from doing so.
Dani's the embodiment of the MPID program. He has the highest academic standards, but also a great heart, and he's dedicated to using the best evidence-based approaches to improving the lives of people in developing countries. You really couldn't ask for a better director for the program.
I spent over a decade teaching PED 101 in the MPID program with Dani Rodrik. It was an immense pleasure. Dani is a phenomenal teacher, and I learned perhaps as much, if not more, than the students in the classroom.
Dani has been very influential on how I think about development and how I think about economics as a social science, as a partial understanding of human behavior and social interaction. Thank you, Dani, for all that you've done for us.
Dear Dani, you have taught me the importance of academic honesty, to value ideas for their merit and not their prestige of popularity, to be willing to question the conventional wisdom, and to never be afraid to be a contrarian thinker. Thank you for everything that you have done for the MPID family.
The more time I spent in Dani Rodrik's class on international trade, the more I wanted to stay in academia, which is exactly the opposite of what the MPID program is supposed to do. But that's what happens when you put a really great lecturer, mentor, and writer in front of students.
Hi, Dani. Just wanted to thank you for all the years of service to the MPID program and for being such an incredible advocate for our program and for our students. Thank you very much for everything you did.
Dani, congratulations on 25 years of unbelievable leadership and inspiration. You've been a personal inspiration for me and for many of our students, and will continue to be in the years to come. Thank you for your service.
I've been here because Dani recruited me. So Dani, thanks for these 25 years. I've had enormous fun here at Harvard. It would not have happened without you. I don't know if you've come to regret that, but there you are. I'm here, thanks to you.
Dani Rodrik and his values infused every aspect of the MPID program, but the most important one for me as a faculty chair who followed in Dani's footsteps was the precedent he established of no meetings ever.
Hi Dani, I want to thank you for designing this amazing course, for inviting me to join the journey and meet a wonderful series of students, and I hope Manchester United has a better season next year.
Dani, we all admire and appreciate your long-term leadership of the MPAID program. I particularly like the way you assure each class that it is the most impressive class yet.
Dani, you are a superstar scholar that challenges orthodoxy but also believes in institution. And that DNA affects everything about the extraordinary MPID program and produces graduates who create and build governments and institutions and improve the lives of people across the globe.
Well, thank you all. All I have to say, had I known this was going to happen, I would have stepped down sooner. This was very moving. Thank you, Eliana. Thank you, Christine. Yes, Christine and Miguel. I don't know if they're there, but thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope Eliana will let me stick around.
Thank you so much, Eliana, and thank you again, Dani. Our next speaker is Jeremy Weinstein, Dean of the Kennedy School, and as he said last night, one of us.
It is so great to be with all of you in the forum. The forum for me is an electric place. It's especially an electric place when it is full to the rafters. And in Dani introducing me as one of you, that could mean lots of things. I'm a development person. I've spent a lot of my career thinking about the questions that motivate so many of you in your work. It also means I survived graduate micro. And so when Asim's picture was up there and Moscolel, Winston, and Green was in the background, some of the shivers that I had as a first-year PhD student here came back. And often the respite that I needed from problem sets was in this space, right? To think not only about the technical skills that I was developing, but the political and policy problems that motivated me. And so in a room like this, surrounded by people with the electric atmosphere, was where I could put these different things together. So I wanted to share a couple thoughts with you as you all come back together for this 25th anniversary. And in taking over as dean in July, one of the places that I often start in conversations with faculty, staff, and students is, what has brought you here to this place? What has made you choose to pursue your education at the Kennedy School or to work on the issues that have animated your career? And so I wanted to start a little bit with what brought me to development as a kind of centerpiece of my own career. Because I know each of you comes here with your own story, what brought these issues to the fore in your own life. Now, I grew up in California, in Silicon Valley, and I was really interested as a young person in issues of economic justice. That's in part because I lived in a place where highways and county boundaries separated some people who had extraordinary opportunities for economic growth for their own families and their own careers, opportunities to pursue higher education and to achieve. But just across the highway in a different county line and in a different school district, people had different life expectancies, they had different opportunities for education and different opportunities for achievement. And a lot of what shaped those differential trajectories were policy choices that were made by governments and policy choices that were often shaped by identity. Identity, people's racial and ethnic identity, people's social class. And so I thought I was going to spend my career really working on issues of economic justice in the United States. But I had this really transformative experience early on in my career. I was 19. It was 1995. You can do the math. Yes, I just turned 50. And I moved to live in South Africa, right at the end of apartheid. And it was an extraordinary period. Nelson Mandela had just been elected president. A country was grappling with the extraordinary legacy of an apartheid system, profound inequality that one saw almost nowhere else on the planet at the extreme level that was manifest in South Africa. And I was this 19-year-old who was studying at the University of Western Cape and teaching in a secondary school. And watching this unbelievable social transformation take place before my eyes, where issues of race and identity and inequality were manifest in this context that was new to me, where every day, as Eliana described about how when she travels, she learns every day. Every day I was learning something new about how people approach the world, what they care about, what issues they confronted. But I walked away with two really profound insights that shaped the subsequent arc of my career. The first was that it is possible to redesign and reimagine how politics works and who government serves. And I think growing up in the United States, I wasn't convinced that transformative change was possible, but here I was observing transformative change in real time. I was observing a set of individuals who are coming together to write a constitution and design a democracy hundreds of years after the United States wrote its own constitution, thinking about what it means to represent, to build institutions that are accountable, to be inclusive of different populations 200 years after the founding of the American Republic. And I also observed inequalities that were manifest in South Africa and in the region that were so much larger and so much more extreme than anything I had been exposed to as a young person growing up in California. And it shifted my entire orientation in my career, from thinking about the United States, as the place where I was born and raised and the issues to work on, and to really think about issues of inequality and opportunity on a global scale. And it took me from that initial focus to spending most of my career working on challenges in the global South and in Africa in particular. And for me, it's been an extraordinary, life-affirming experience, not only to be engaged in different parts of the world on questions that are so important in people's lives, but also to have the experience to work deeply in the world of practice. One of my first experiences having come out of the PhD program was to join a team that was working with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia after the transition. And guess who else was on that team? And for years after, a bunch of MPAID graduates, right, who showed up to partner, with the new Liberian ministers. I had the opportunity to serve at the White House, thinking about between 2009 and 2011, how we could design and support a national global development strategy that brought together aid and trade and investment in the spirit of the progress that we needed to make in the world. I was able to serve at the UN when the Sustainable Development Goals were being negotiated, and to have an opportunity in that multilateral space to think about the alignment of national policies and international influences. And so for me, global development is at the center of what has motivated me for my entire career. And so in that sense, I'm deeply one of you, and my own story of motivation, rooted in my own experience, parallels in many ways what brought each of you in your own experiences to the work that you do. Of course, as I said last night when I welcomed you here, MPAID didn't exist when I arrived. And so I experienced tremendous envy to have found myself in a PhD program constrained by various elements of that scholarly career when the program that I really needed was just around the corner. So I was studying with lots of the same people. As I said last night, one of my first and most important courses was with Dani. I remember writing a paper. At this point, social capital was in vogue. This was before we had terms like inclusive institutions and other things. And I remember working on a paper about social capital and economic growth and thinking about the country of Mauritius and how it navigated its diverse ethnic identities and built a social compact that could enable growth under Dani's mentorship. I was a PhD student who got my first research grant from the Center for International Development in its founding year when Jeff Sachs was its head. It was a research grant to work on issues of conflict in West Africa that led to my first, my dissertation and my first book. So I really was shaped as a scholar and practitioner of development in this space, but I loved MPAID because it was doing something that wasn't happening in the PhD program. It was the place where technical expertise was being bridged in a serious way with the world of practice. It had a deeply international cohort so that the problems of development were not problems of the global north looking at the global south, but they were the problems of real places that people experience in their daily lives, and the role of national governments and their policy choices were at the center. It reflected this intermixing of national strategies and the international influences and organizations that ultimately need to align behind these choices. And it had this firm commitment to practice being shaped by evidence, evidence-based policies. I also really admired the individuals who came together to build the MPAID program. I was looking back earlier this morning at Dani's early work, Has Globalization Gone Too Far? I often talk about this book, and I was reading some of the early descriptions of it, and when you read even just the abstracts of the book, you realize how far ahead of his time Dani was in talking about the potential political unsustainability of the path that we were on at that moment in time. I followed closely Lant. Lant makes us laugh every time we see him. And alongside the humor is just extraordinary brilliance and work that Lant, in partnership with Matt Andrews and Michael Woolcock and others have done about state capabilities. And the question of how you build and design state institutions that can really deliver on people's needs has been hugely influential in my life. The work on growth diagnostics, something I remember calling Lant when I was at the White House, and it was like, how do we put this to work in reshaping how the US government works and does development? So the individuals and the model and the theory of the case of the program were something that was so inspiring to me as someone who was on the PhD track and that I took with me as I moved on to my own academic career, thinking about my own teaching and engagement in the world. Now, Lant, as he is often prone to remind people, and colleagues of ours at the Center for Global Development have done similar things. This has been an extraordinary period for the improvement in the human condition. And even though we may not have the well-identified econometric analysis that we need, I would argue that the statistically significant coefficient on the effect of the MPAID program is really substantial for this period of extraordinary improvement in human well-being. You all have contributed to this. You all have done this over 25 years of your engagement with this school and the work that you do. And you've done it in national governments, you've done it in international organizations, nonprofits, philanthropy, and the private sector. You've done it across the full range of issue areas that are central to improving the human condition, from economic growth and poverty reduction to climate and energy and agriculture and infrastructure and health and education. You've done it not only as policymakers, but also as political leaders. You've done it not only as analysts, but also as innovators. And that's an extraordinary record of achievement for a program birthed at this school in such a short time. And now your energy and insight is needed more than ever. The stakes are extraordinary for the lived experience of people confronted with extreme poverty, confronted with the lack of freedom, confronted with a changing global economy that doesn't have a space for them in it. And so the skills and the expertise and the passion and your own personal motivations for being here are as essential today as the moment you showed up here for your orientation. And I gain a lot of confidence as dean of a school knowing that what brings people to this school is not a fear of how difficult it is to make progress on these problems, but in fact, the energy and the inspiration and the motivation to work on problems that are extremely difficult to make progress on. And that is the moment in which we find ourselves now. And there are 5 challenges for global development that I'm thinking about as we approach the next decade. The first, and of course this does harken back to some of Dani's earlier work, but we have a set of growth paths that have been pursued in recent decades that generate enormous inequalities, that generate regions that are profoundly left behind, that create gaps in opportunity and jobs, that are politically unsustainable. And ultimately, we have to grapple with that. I became a political scientist in part because I believe politics is central to making progress on the human condition. And if one needed any reminder of that, we are living in a moment where politics rears its head. And so we need to marry our orientation to growth paths, our orientation to providing these extraordinary opportunities for people to improve their well-being with answering the hard questions about how we design a political structure in which that can happen and how we produce growth paths that are sustainable. And so that brings me to the second point. I've spent 20 years as a social scientist thinking about these things that we call inclusive institutions. And our evidence has gotten better and better over time that the way in which we design politics, the rules that we set in place for business, the ways in which we protect property rights are fundamental in important ways to how growth can proceed. But wow, at the same time that we may have a scholarly consensus, the social consensus around those issues is evaporating before our eyes. And so those of us in this space have to take politics seriously, not just because of the growth outcomes that we want to achieve, but also because these politics that are coming apart threaten to unravel the societies in which we live. I also think a lot about demographics and migration. A lot of the research I was doing before I started taking a lot of meetings, as Lant was joking about with Dani, was really on questions of migration because when I was serving in the State Department at the United Nations, in the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and with issues that were unfolding in Africa and in Afghanistan and other places, the global refugee crisis had reached epic proportions. And so I really began to think about migration. And one of the challenges that we confront with migration in the present moment is that where people are and where jobs are not aligned at all. Yet we have also experienced the political unsustainability of policies that are designed to facilitate that free flow of people, and that free flow of people, which we know to be one of the most powerful interventions to improve the human condition. And so societies that are not producing enough people are really going to struggle to fill jobs, and societies that produce too many people are going to struggle with how to create opportunity for those individuals. And migration is going to have to be a part of the answer to that set of challenges, but how we do that politically is entirely unclear. And the final two things that I'd lift up are first on technology. We are entering, and I've been doing my own writing and teaching about this for years, a period of absolutely extraordinary technological change. We have to be thinking about what this technological change means for historical growth paths and what the growth paths are likely to be for different economies in the future. And it's a period where harnessing these new technologies offers extraordinary potential upside, but also the potential to magnify inequalities within countries and across countries. And finally, it may not all be about aid. It may not all depend on the construction of institutions in the global north that support development processes. But ultimately, we all live on one planet. And when people would come to see me when I was deputy to the UN ambassador, they'd ask me about the United Nations, and they'd complain about the United Nations and how inefficient and bureaucratic it was, how problematic it was. And I'd kind of remind them of the founding moment of the United Nations. And I'd say that there's this extraordinary thing that happened in the aftermath of World War II, which is that a bunch of people with different identities from different countries, having experienced an unbelievable global trauma, came together and said that there are problems on this planet that we can only solve if we work together. And it produces funny things, like when we were dealing with Syria's chemical weapons attack in 2014, Luxembourg was the chair of the UN Security Council. Small, tiny country in Europe leading the world in a discussion about how we might extract chemical weapons from Syria. But we can't lose sight of that ambition, because ultimately there is a global commons. And issues of climate and the environment, or global health, or peace and security, these are issues that are going to demand international cooperation. And the models that we have for international cooperation are coming apart at the seams. But there also was a world before international cooperation. And we can do our homework and understand what that world was like and what it meant. And so that's our agenda. Our agenda is not small. But our agenda wasn't small when you signed up for this program. The problems that you were confronted with in the classroom and your own career were never easy to imagine the pathway to a solution. This was a program that took seriously the idea that there was no silver bullet, that we're not going to move from one answer every decade to another answer and you'd know what the answer was, but that we were going to need to learn and innovate and experiment using the best of our ingenuity and our collaboration to make progress. So I want to thank you all for coming back to the school at this important time. There's strength and power that comes from being together in this climate of uncertainty and extraordinary change. There's strength and power that comes from paying tribute to the amazing individuals that have built this program over time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Our next and our final speaker is Carol Finny. So as Carol kind of makes her way up here to the stage, I will say that the most important people for Carol are her family, who are here with her today. But I will expand that to say that for Carol, MPAID is family. She has a deep and fierce love for every single one of you. I don't know if she eats, sleeps, and dreams of solving problems for and with MPAIDs, but I would not be surprised if that was true. I'm honored to be her colleague, a fellow gardener with a focus on daffodils, and I'm honored to continue to be her friend even after she retires. Come on up, Carol.
Thank you all. It's fantastic to see so many of you here, alumni, current students, faculty, and guests. Wow. And I want to stop for a second and thank you for the joyful reception yesterday. Indeed, we are family. I'm delighted to see all of you here today and to know that many more people are joining us remotely. Now, as many of you have observed, I'm an introvert, and this is not my natural role. So I have my notes. So, looking back and going forward, here we are in 2025. We've had students from 122 countries, and our 25th class is about to graduate. We are immensely proud of our 16 to 50 alumni working in locations as varied, truly, as Norway and Papua New Guinea, in all types of organizations, and Jeremy was mentioning, to make the world a better place around the world. We applaud you, and I want to take a moment to just celebrate all of the things that you guys do. Before we go on, I want to pause for a moment of silence for those who are no longer with us. Sadly, I've just been informed that Vishal Segal, class of 2006, passed away recently. May they rest in peace. Thank you. Okay, so how did we get here? We can take a moment to look back via the slides that we actually had used at the 2010 ceremony exactly 15 years ago in this exact spot. Yep, they're a bit dated. There were a few key moments early on when I thought, okay, maybe this program will actually get off the ground, and they are indicated by stars. In the spring of 1998, a new degree program, MPID, was announced by then Kennedy School Dean Joe Nye, along with Professor Jeff Sachs. That fall, the faculty made a list of what they thought everyone needed to know to succeed in the field of international development. It was a very long list. After much discussion, we concluded that we'd admit really smart people, require some prerequisite courses so we didn't have to start at the very beginning, and expect them to work very hard. As you all know, that's what we did. Then, we placed an ad in The Economist. That was our best idea of how to reach across the world people who were interested in economics. And then we waited. Okay. December 22nd, 1998, a red letter day, our first application from Steve Kapsos arrived in the mail. Back in the day, people wrote these things by hand into a form and actually mailed them to us. I know that's hard to believe. Soon, Dani Rodrik became the MPID faculty chair. Note the gold star. In September 1999, the new students arrived. Again, we'll note the pens and papers. And we put them to work. With no math camp, it was tough going. In summer... Actual photos. This is how they looked. In summer 2000, Ricardo Hausman and Lant Pritchett joined HKS to bring their practitioners' perspective to the program, especially to the SIPA. In September, the second class arrived, and with math camp this time. Thank you, Deb. In June 2001, at commencement, all 50 students in that graduating class were in attendance. The reception guests included friend of Jeff Sachs, Bono, and The Edge, along with Larry Summers, the incoming president of Harvard University. It was a beautiful day. The first class realized that the value of their degree depended on the success of the program, so they set about to build its reputation. And thus, the tradition of alumni building the program by recruiting future students began, and they coined the phrase, "Our grads are our best ads." That continues to be true to this day. Now, I'd like to give you a view of some of the faculty over the years. Slowly, Aaron. I know you recognize many of these people. Okay. Okay. Now, some of you may have noticed that in the upper corner there, we have Jeff Frankel in every single one of these slides. This is because Jeff is the only faculty member who's taught every single one of the 27 cohorts we've had so far. Moving along. Lant became faculty chair in 2008. Note the gold star. It was an honor and a privilege to work with these two faculty chairs who alternated in the position over those early years, and we had some fun. After 2010, one class followed another smoothly. Our mission was clear, and year after year we attracted really wonderful students. As Lant put it, we had decided to devote substantial resources to a new kind of development training that wasn't available anywhere else. And what was that development training? It was essentially providing all of the economics and all of the skill sets that economists had so that our graduates would be able to sit down at the table with economists in any setting and hold their own. We wanted a training that was economics but grounded in the realities of development and tailored for practitioners, and that's what we do. I thought of my work as organizing things. Running admissions, planning orientation and post-exam parties, trying to balance the workload, and generally herding cats and trying to make the trains run on time. Over the years, I've been called many things. Among my favorites were most benevolent central planner, chaos coordinator, and everyone's second mother. In the past couple of months, through the Kudo board and many emails, I've received lovely messages from a number of current and former students. Many remembered my orientation admonitions to wear a bike helmet, buy a warm coat, and, long before COVID, wash your hands. But in their comments, the theme came through of another element that they appreciated. And it's in the comments like these that I was touched most. I'm going to give you guys a chance to read those to yourself. The short version is, thank you for making Cambridge home. It has truly been my pleasure. Over many years, it continued to be a great privilege to work with faculty chairs Dani Rodrik and Lant Pritchett all these years. Thank you both for your partnership every day of the job. I've also been fortunate to have wonderful team members over the years who do so much of the work for which I get credit. I especially want to thank program coordinators in the last decade, Rami Jacobson, Kevin Drum, and Aaron Mead. And, of course, Associate Director Sarah Olia. I could not be more pleased that Sarah will be the new program director in July. I can retire with peace and confidence knowing that the program will be in her capable hands. Sarah, this bar of soap represents the care I know you will take for students' health and well-being. It is a joy to pass the torch to Sarah Olia. Who represents a new generation of leadership. Please join me in welcoming her to her new role. My family is the most important thing, of course. But my job has been a deeply rewarding part of my life, and I will miss it sorely. It's been the honor of a lifetime to be part of this amazing community. Thank you all.
Okay, folks, remember that really hard thing that we were going to do at the very end. Just when you think you can escape to the lemonade that's in the courtyard, we have that one more task. First, I invite Dani, Eliana, and Sarah back up here with Jeremy for a photo up here of that group. While they are doing that, I'm going to seamlessly switch to a handheld mic. Seamless. Oh. Seamlessly switching. Are we good? Am I now seamlessly switched? Excellent. Okay, here's what's going to be tough about this photo. All the people in the wings are currently going to not be able to be seen. So you are going to either A, come onto this stage when they are done, or B, go to the third floor. I leave you to that choice. While I am talking to you, Martha is going up to the third floor. That camera up there is going to take a giant photo straight down. So everyone in this area is going to have to turn around and face up. Heads high. There is a lot of reflection. They have to sit. Okay. That is very difficult. Okay. So everyone on the sides, come to the stage or crush in to your fellow alumni in the middle. And you in the loges have already received your directions. You are also not in the photo until you go to the third floor. So we're good. Keep attention. You guys are amazing. This is fantastic. I've never seen this before in a Kennedy School alumni community. I'm going to continue to speak,
I know, exactly.
sometimes awkwardly, about this. Okay.
Yeah. You should have just gotten a drone to I know, an internal drone would have been cool.
Great. Everyone is following directions. I don't know what has happened. This is amazing. Okay. You can all squeeze in more. I definitely see some space. You're all one family now. Keep that in mind. Get tight. I'm going to keep going up. If we are very good at this, this photo may be in the HKS magazine. I cannot make that promise, but it is right there in front of us. We are doing really well. Martha, I'm coming up. Go down, yeah. You're all doing great. Give that lady a mic. She cannot be heard. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Excuse me.
Let's start with arms around each other.
Arms around each other.
No, okay.
People on the left, lean in.
Perfect. Here we go.
Stage left.
Yep. Here we go. Smiling at me. Have to have those smiles. Yep. Then we're going to do one for the top row over there. One more. You're all in it. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Woo! Lemonade is available if you can get out to that courtyard. What you knew you were waiting for, cold lemonade outside in the courtyard. Thank you so much.
Baby, you and me together.
Oh, not, I'm like, you're not.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.